In the fourth year of my entanglement with Victor, my family went bankrupt. His first love took the chance to say, perfect timing, she should suffer a little, to knock off that spoiled attitude. Victor listened to her and left me, penniless, on a foreign street. 4 months later, I returned to the southern city, battered and bruised. Everyone assumed I'd go right back to clinging to Victor. Instead, I kept my distance, returned his gifts, and completely cut ties with him. Victor joked with his friends, finally shook off that annoying girl. Yet, on the day I left the city, he rushed to the airport, looking devastated, and pleaded, trembling. "Amity, stay. Can we go back to how things were?" I gave him a gentle smile, pointing at my slightly rounded belly. "Victor, look. Do you still think we can?" The day I dragged myself back to the southern city, Victor's assistant came to pick me up at the airport. When I arrived, the private room was full of lively chatter. I barely approached when I heard Victor's voice. "Amity's finally learned some manners. Seems like she's acting a lot more tame." "It's about time that spoiled nature of hers was worn down," another voice said. "Bonnie's right," another agreed, "now that her family's bankrupt, she's no heiress anymore. If she still acts all arrogant, who's going to put up with her?" "It's just a pity for you, Victor," someone chimed in, "she'll probably cling to you more than ever now." Victor sneered, "You don't think I know? She's nothing but a nuisance." Just as he finished, he looked up and saw me stepping through the door. The room that had been filled with laughter suddenly went silent. I saw the shock, surprise, and disbelief in their eyes. 4 months ago, I'd been that dazzling, proud heiress. Now, I was haggard and emaciated, like a refugee barely escaping hell. Bonnie, usually so composed, looked at me with concern. "Amity, what happened to you? Come in." But I stood still, without moving, and didn't show my old displeasure when I saw Bonnie sitting beside Victor. I didn't immediately wear my emotions on my face, didn't let Bonnie provoke me with just a few words until I cried and fought with Victor. In the past, I'd ruined gatherings like these so often that hardly anyone liked me. Thinking of that, I only felt amused. "What are you standing there for? Aren't you coming in?" Victor frowned at me, his face full of that same, unmistakable disdain and impatience I knew so well. I lowered my gaze and smiled faintly. "Victor, thank you for sending your assistant to pick me up." "Amity? I came today to return this." I took a small box from my coat pocket and handed it over. It was a simple necklace, the only birthday gift Victor had given me over the years. I'd cherished it, wearing it only on my birthday, but now, I didn't want it anymore. Victor didn't take it, sitting there with a cold, tight expression. After a moment's hesitation, I placed the box on the nearby table. "Amity, your hand." A girl nearby gasped, her eyes on my hand. Victor's gaze immediately fell on my hand as well. It was full of scars and calluses, my once soft fingertips worn raw and scabbed over, disfigured and ugly. I pulled my hand back into my sleeve and looked up at Victor again. "Victor, I came today for one last thing." "What is it?" His voice was cold enough to make anyone's heart sink. "I must have really annoyed you over the years, following you around." I gave him an apologetic smile. "I was immature and willful, I'm sorry for that. From now on, I won't bother you again." I didn't linger any longer and turned to leave. As I was about to step out, Victor stopped me. "Amity. You'd better stick to your word and not come back begging for anything." I paused for a second but didn't turn around. "All right." The night my family went bankrupt, I was still abroad. My father, who loved me most, couldn't be saved. Shortly after, my mother liquidated everything and moved to stay with my uncle overseas, leaving me with just this tiny apartment. I didn't resent her for abandoning me. Instead, I was grateful that she left me something to keep off the streets. The bed here was small, but compared to a foreign basement room with 8 people, it was a luxury. I slept the best I had in 4 months, until the doorbell woke me. When I saw Victor at the door, I was surprised for a moment, then quickly remembered he owned a property here too. I opened the door and, before he could speak, said, "Sorry, I'll move out soon. I'll put this place up for sale through an agent." "Amity, what do you mean by that?" I wasn't sure if it was my imagination, but Victor's face grew dark as soon as I said this. I'll move today and make sure you don't have to see me again. I grabbed my phone to call the agent. But before I could finish dialing, Victor snatched the phone from me and smashed it to the floor. Playing hard to get? You've been doing that for 4 years now. Haven't you had enough? Selling your place, moving out, then finding yourself stranded late at night with no choice but to call me for help. Then you'll end up moving back in with me, right? Amity, can't you grow up a little? Stop using these pathetic tricks. I stared at the shattered phone on the floor, feeling a pang of pain. After months of scraping by just to eat, that phone had been a gift from a shopkeeper who took pity on me, a second-hand device. I knelt to pick up the pieces when Victor threw his wallet at me. Get yourself a new one, I'll cover it, he said. Spare me the excuse to get closer. With that, he stormed out. I looked at the wallet on the floor, and, laughing through my tears, I eventually bought the cheapest phone I could find. He was right, best to leave no debts unpaid. I called his assistant to come retrieve Victor's wallet. Miss Amity, I'm so sorry, but I really can't leave right now. Could you bring it to the office? After a moment's thought, I agreed, all right, I'll bring it over shortly. When the assistant hung up, he glanced at Victor, who was standing by the window. Though he didn't quite understand why Victor had instructed him this way, he sensed that his boss might not hate Miss Amity as much as he thought. Did you get the medicine? Yes, sir, it's all here. The assistant quickly handed over the paper bag. Inside were treatments for cuts and scar removal, clearly meant for Amity. Victor nodded. All right, you can go. About 40 minutes later, the receptionist called the assistant's office. The assistant knocked and entered cautiously. Sir, Miss Amity sent a package. Before he could finish, everything on Victor's desk was suddenly swept to the floor. The assistant kept his head down, holding his breath, until after a while, Victor gave a bitter chuckle. Well. In just a few months, she certainly learned her lesson. After listing the apartment, I temporarily found a cheap hotel. Victor hadn't tried to contact me again. Instead, he paraded around with Bonnie like a new couple. Every so often, someone would call me. Amity, are you and Victor fighting? Is Bonnie going to marry Victor? I heard they went ring shopping yesterday. I ignored it all. I only looked at my reflection, my belly just slightly rounding, and called the agent to lower the asking price by 50,000 yuan. I wanted to leave this city, never to return. The child inside me was an accident within an accident. By the time I realized, I was already 3 months along. The doctor said the baby was well formed, with tiny hands and feet. I lay there, tears streaming down, but eventually, I decided to give him up. However, perhaps it was fate, as the surgery was about to start, an explosion sounded from afar, and the hospital suddenly lost power. And so, the child remained. I consoled myself, at least the father was a handsome, kind-hearted man from the East. Victor had left me penniless in that war-torn country. The dangers faced by a single young woman there were unimaginable. Either sold to the red light district, where she'd die of illness, or forced to go with some man. The moment I cried out to him for help, I'd resigned myself to whatever was next. When he reached out his hand, my fate's course changed. The real father of my child is that morally conscious, handsome, and wealthy Eastern man. At least it's better than if it were Victor. Perhaps, in its own way, fate has shown me a hint of mercy. The day I sold my house, I got a call from Bonnie. Amity, I've decided to accept Victor's proposal. Congratulations. I'd like you to come to the engagement party. Will you? Sorry. Are you still not over him? Bonnie's tone softened, as if she pitied me. Some things are just not meant to be. But it looks like you've gotten smarter, you're finally giving up gracefully. Still, Amity, it's pointless. Victor only listens to me, he's only ever had me in his heart. Just look, one word from me, and he dropped you. Bonnie, what exactly are you trying to say? There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Amity, I'm here to reclaim what's mine. So, I want to make it crystal clear, stay away from Victor. Am I clinging to him? Don't think I don't know what you're planning. If you love him that much, how could you let him go? And your family's bankrupt, too. If he only cares about you and listens to you, then what are you afraid of? Bonnie went silent for a long moment, so I ended the call. A few seconds later, a voice message came through. Victor's voice, low and dismissive, finally rid of that annoying woman. I've never felt this free in my life. Congratulations on your newfound freedom, I thought, and smiled as I turned off my phone. The day I left the city, the sky was blanketed with thick, oppressive smog. I got out of the taxi, suitcase in hand, and walked into the airport terminal. In the distance, I heard the unmistakable roar of an engine. I turned instinctively, and there it was, a familiar car speeding in my direction. I gripped the handle of my suitcase, turned away, and began walking forward. Amity. Victor got out of the car and caught up with me in just a few steps. Amity, he said, gripping my arm with trembling fingers. Where are you going? I looked at him calmly. Let go, Victor. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked completely shattered. Amity, stay. Let's go back to the way things were. Please? I released my suitcase handle, stepped back, and slowly unbuttoned my coat. The winter wind here is brutally cold, it cut through me in an instant. My figure was still slim, but my lower abdomen had a slight swell. Victor's gaze slid down, inch by inch, until it froze in place. I smiled at him. Victor, look. How could things go back to how they were? The gusting wind seemed to pause, as if held in place. Victor stood there, stunned. After a long time, his red-rimmed eyes lifted to meet mine. Amity, how did it come to this? I pulled my coat tighter and brushed the windswept hair from my face. You're asking me? I smiled, steady and calm. Isn't this exactly what you wanted? It's not like that, Amity. I may have left you there, but Bonnie told me she had family there. She promised they'd come to get you. She said you were spoiled, naive about the world. With that attitude, how could you ever be a good wife? I was so frustrated with you at the time, I just snapped and agreed. But I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to make you struggle a bit, so you'd stop chasing me. Amity, did Bonnie's relative not come for you? The smile on my face slowly faded in the cold wind. Oh, he came. Victor let out a relieved sigh. I knew it, Bonnie always handles things with such grace and care. But do you know what her relative does for a living? Victor's face went blank. Amity? Illegal trafficking, smuggling, every kind of crime. I watched Victor as he stared back at me, stunned, his expression almost comical in its shock. I nearly died trying to escape from him. I lost everything, my ID, my phone, my wallet. I had to fight homeless people for food, slept under bridges at night, and was almost assaulted more than once. In the end, someone marked me to be sold to a brothel. My tears had dried up in those 4 months. But perhaps because of the freezing wind, my eyes stung unbearably. The only person who reached out to help me was him. The father of my child. Enough. Amity, stop. Victor's face contorted in pain. He stepped forward, grabbed my wrist. I'm taking you to the hospital. Amity, this child can't stay. And why not? He avoided my gaze, his voice thick and hoarse. If you get rid of the baby, we can pretend none of this ever happened. Amity, I'll treat you well. Your mother's overseas now, and you have no other family here. If you stay with me, I'll take care of you. Victor. I wrenched my wrist from his grasp. Amity, don't be foolish. No one else knows about the pregnancy. I'll arrange for a private hospital. It'll be confidential, and your reputation won't be affected at all. And then? I pressed. Will you marry me? Victor hesitated, momentarily taken aback. His gaze dropped, his mouth tense, struggling as if wrestling with a decision. Amity, given your family's current situation, my parents would never approve. But don't worry, I'll always be there for you. I'll take care of you forever. Victor. I called his name softly, and as he looked up at me, I gave him a gentle smile. Do you know what I'm most thankful for now? For what? For not having ever been with you. For the fact that the baby I'm carrying isn't yours. Amity. Victor's eyes betrayed his panic. I took 2 steps back. Don't come looking for me again. Don't make me regret ever loving someone like you. I pulled my suitcase and turned to leave. But Victor came after me again. Amity, where can you even go like this? Leaving this city, leaving me, how will you survive? I turned sharply and let go of the suitcase, spreading my scarred hands before him. These hands will keep me alive, Victor. Amity won't starve. Victor stared, trembling, as though in shock. I'd never seen him like this. He'd always been a carefree, untamed spirit. Wherever he went, he was proud and defiant, no matter the circumstances. In my youth, I'd prayed countless times, in secret. I prayed Victor would love me, be kinder to me. Prayed Bonnie would stay away from Victor, so she wouldn't come between us. Prayed I could marry him. Whenever he smiled at me, or softened a little, I'd forget all the heartache and keep chasing him. Tirelessly, shamelessly. Now, he's the one who can't let go. He's the one begging me not to leave. Finally, there's room for me in his eyes. But all I feel is disgust, a revulsion I can't describe. Amity. Victor reached for my hand. But just as his fingers were about to touch me, he stopped. His hands, soft and unmarked from a life of comfort. Once, my hands had been like that, too. But now, my knuckles were swollen, my fingers scarred and calloused. They're no longer beautiful, but they're stronger. Even a flower raised in a greenhouse can survive outside. As I pulled my suitcase into the airport lobby, a sudden discomfort gripped my lower abdomen. Maybe it was the intense argument earlier that had left my emotions in turmoil. Maybe my body was simply too worn out to handle any more. Then, as a wave of warmth flooded through me, my vision started to blur, the room spinning around me. I felt my body weaken, collapsing to the floor. In those last moments of consciousness, I heard people calling my name, an incoherent mix of voices. But soon, they all faded away, replaced by a deep, deathly silence. When I opened my eyes again, a stark whiteness filled my vision. The smell of disinfectant was thick in the air, and the steady beep of a machine sounded by my side. I instinctively reached a hand to touch my abdomen, but a warm hand gently stopped me. Miss Amity, please don't worry. The baby is fine. I looked up, startled, at a middle-aged woman in front of me. Her face was plain, but her eyes were full of kindness. Her clothes looked a bit unusual, and her Mandarin was heavily accented. Something about her seemed vaguely familiar, though I couldn't place her. Mr. William has already been informed, she said, tucking the blanket around me, her voice soothing. He's on a plane, on his way. I nodded, my foggy mind slowly processing her words. Mr. William. Could it be him? But we'd both agreed, no more contact, no more involvement. That was the plan. Now, being pregnant had complicated everything. I didn't know much about this Mr. William or his background. But from his appearance, lifestyle, and even his casual attire, I could sense he came from a place of immense privilege. The morning after we spent the night together, he'd asked me offhandedly if I wanted to stay with him. At the time, staying with him seemed like the most promising way forward. But I'd refused. I didn't want to be seen as a leech. He didn't seem offended by my refusal. In fact, he even left me a sum of money, though I declined it. He saved my life, and I stayed with him that night, call it even. For the next 3 months, I never saw him again. But life was rough as I drifted from place to place, learning how to survive, budget, and observe people's behavior. There were times when I was exhausted and filled with regret. In those lowest moments, I even thought about going back to him. But I toughed it out. Depending on a man, even for a moment, would mean bowing to him for a lifetime. My family had gone bankrupt. I was no longer a rich girl. If I went back, still carrying that princess mindset, I'd likely end up living at the mercy of others. But that wasn't the life I wanted. The gentlewoman stayed by my side, making sure I drank water and ate some food. Soon after, I fell asleep again, though it was restless. I even dreamt of Mr. William. In the dream, he was seated casually on the living room sofa, lighting a cigar. A servant led me into the room, and after a moment, he looked up at me. Amity. Mr. William. His gaze was cold and detached, as if separated by an impenetrable fog. Even though he was within arm's reach, he seemed worlds away. In the dream, after saying my name, he didn't speak again, not until he'd finished his cigar. By then, my back was soaked in sweat. In the dream, my belly had grown larger, though my body was still frail. Just as I felt I couldn't stand any longer, he finally spoke. "Are you trying to get pregnant to hold me hostage?" "Mr. William, no. You gave me the pills, I took them all. You can check the surveillance if you don't believe me." I defended myself frantically, but he seemed entirely unconvinced. With an exhausted wave, he signaled to his guards to escort me out. "Mr. William, please, don't." I woke from the dream, crying out his name, my face damp with tears. As I groggily opened my eyes, still murmuring, "Mr. William." "Having a nightmare?" "You were crying like a child." My blurry vision cleared just enough to see a man's handsome face above me, East Asian features, but with amber-colored eyes. His Mandarin was a bit off, but his voice was low and soothing. He was dressed in a black, handcrafted suit with peak lapels, sitting right by my bedside, gently wiping the tears from my face with a handkerchief. It was such a strange, surreal sight, but oddly comforting at the same time. I stared at him, momentarily forgetting to cry. "Mr. William?" "Yes, it's me." Setting the damp handkerchief aside, he replied softly. I snapped out of my daze and hurried to sit up, but he pressed me back down. "Stay lying down." Ignoring his gesture, I started explaining, "Mr. William, I took all the pills you left. You can ask the housekeeper, or check the surveillance if you like. I have no idea why I got pregnant. The moment I found out, I went straight to the hospital. But then there was an explosion, and the power went out. The surgery couldn't be completed. With a man like William, it was best to speak only the truth. If you'd like, you can have the hospital schedule the procedure now. If it puts you at ease, you can stay until it's over." "Amity." He suddenly interrupted, just as he had in my dream, his voice calm yet rich and deep. Only now, instead of sounding weary and cold, his tone was gentle. "I have a code of faith. I don't take lives lightly." As he said this, his gaze softened, a rare warmth filling his normally distant eyes. "Especially not when it's my own child." He leaned closer, his long fingers brushing the damp hair off my forehead. "Rest well. Don't let your mind wander. Mr. William?" He withdrew his hand and stood up, looking down at me with his usual, emotionless gaze. "Unless, of course, you really don't want the child." On the day of my discharge, William asked me the same question he'd once asked before. "Amity, would you consider being my woman?" But this time I didn't give an answer so readily. Dressed in a sleek black coat, with bodyguards and assistants trailing behind him, he looked the epitome of calm and composure, every word and gesture controlled. But his mere presence exuded a subtle authority that made people uneasy. I was no longer that naive Amity who couldn't see the big picture. Following him would mean a life of comfort and luxury, free from worry. But it would also mean becoming like a caged bird, a puppet on strings. And yet, as he looked at me with those gentle eyes, I felt a foolish glimmer of hope. As if, just maybe, he truly meant those words. I struggled for a long moment before I could finally say, "Thank you, Mr. William. But I'm really sorry. I can't go with you." As soon as the words left my mouth, an uneasy stillness settled around us. The men standing behind him held their breath, their eyes downcast, afraid to make a sound. I grew nervous, my palms damp with sweat. "Very well." William's voice broke the silence, his expression unchanging, calm as ever. "Take care of yourself." I quickly shook my head. "Please don't worry about me." William nodded slightly. "Is the money enough?" "Yes, it's enough. If you ever need help, remember to reach out." "I will." "Amity, I mean that." I nodded quickly. "I know, Mr. William. I won't do anything foolish." "Good." He glanced at me one last time before turning and getting into his car. I watched until the car disappeared from sight. Then, placing a hand on my belly, I let out a long, steadying breath. The car had been driving away from the hospital for a while. William, who had remained silent until now, suddenly spoke up. Bart, do I look that frightening? Mr. William, no one could be gentler than you. Why would you even ask that? She seemed so afraid of me. Bart hesitated, trying to explain. Miss Amity just doesn't know you well yet. After all, you two haven't spent much time together. But William didn't seem to hear Bart's response. He gazed out the window, slowly twisting the ring on his finger. Almost as if talking to himself, he murmured, even with a child, she still doesn't want to be with me. Bart fell silent, unsure how to respond. When Miss Amity had desperately called for help that day, Bart thought William was just moved by a passing moment of compassion. Even when William brought her back to his home, Bart hadn't thought much of it. Mr. William had lived alone for so many years. Even his grandmother was on the brink of desperation about it. Those of them around him felt his loneliness, too. Yet to his surprise, that young woman preferred to endure hardship elsewhere rather than stay with him. Bart himself had grown up with hardship. But seeing Miss Amity struggling in the slums, working so hard her hands were blistered just to make ends meet each day, he couldn't help but feel moved. Miss Amity came from a well-off family and probably had never even washed a dish before. Seeing her endure such hardship and exhaustion couldn't help but earn people's respect. It was likely this resilience and stubbornness that only made her linger in Mr. Williams' thoughts more. That's why he had people quietly watching over her and sent his most trusted person to accompany her back home. Then, the news of Miss Amity's near miscarriage came. Mr. William left the negotiation table without hesitation. The effort he put into the trip didn't escape anyone's notice. Even Bart thought they were going to have a new mistress in the household. But to his surprise, Miss Amity still refused to return. Bart wanted to say something comforting but couldn't find the words. Just looking at Mr. William in silence was enough to make Bart feel a pang of sadness. Sir, if you want, I can just bring Miss Amity back by force. William glanced at Bart. No one is to touch her. But sir. Bart was almost breaking protocol in his urgency. If she's happy this way, let her be. Sir. Enough. William closed his eyes, and Bart, though reluctant, fell silent. Just as I left the hospital, I received a call from Chad. Many people in my social circle didn't like me. But Chad treated me fairly well. He was a few years older than me and looked out for me from time to time. Although Victor and I had a nasty falling out, I still greeted Chad in the same way as before. Chad, is there something you need? Amity, are you free to come over for a moment? I paused for a second. If it's something important, you can tell me over the phone. Victor and Bonnie had a fight, and he hit her. I was genuinely surprised. After all, over the years, Bonnie was practically a goddess in Victor's eyes. Now, he was about to marry her, why would he suddenly hit her? Bonnie is hysterically threatening to jump off the building, and Victor can't stop her. Chad, what could I do to help? Victor's forcing Bonnie to apologize to you in person. I couldn't help but laugh. There's no need for that. Bonnie was indeed out of line, but who was really to blame here? Besides, if I hadn't clung on for 4 years, wearing out everyone's patience, this disaster might never have happened. Amity, you know Victor still cares about you. Chad, enough. Hearing words like that now just made me sick to my stomach. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up. Amity. I hung up, feeling exhausted both physically and mentally. I had planned to leave that night, but my body couldn't keep up. The doctor said I needed to come back weekly for prenatal checkups. So, I booked a cheap hotel near the hospital. Just after making the reservation, I received a text from Chad. Amity, Victor is injured, and it's quite serious. In the picture, Victor was slumped on the couch, holding his forehead. Blood streamed through his fingers, covering half his face. In the past, I would have cried at the sight, running to his side without a second thought. But now, I just calmly texted back. Send him to the hospital, it does look serious. Amity, Victor won't go. I didn't reply. A moment later, a call came from an unfamiliar number. I could guess who it was, so I didn't answer. After that, my phone fell silent. After returning to the hotel, I took a quick shower and lay down. The next morning, I didn't wake up until 9. There were several messages on my phone. All from Bonnie, sent at 2 a.m. Amity, are you satisfied? Victor won't marry me, and it's all because of you. I'll make sure to pay you back for that slap. I thought she must be out of her mind. If she really wanted to settle scores, how many slaps would she deserve in return? I blocked all their numbers, including Chad's. Later, when I went back to the hospital for my checkup, I ran into Victor. He was clearly waiting for me. When we met, I didn't try to avoid him. I simply nodded and walked toward the elevator. With a bandage wrapped around his head, Victor looked pitifully disheveled. He stayed silent, just following me around. Registration, checkup, medication pickup. Feeling tired, I sat on a bench to rest. Victor glanced at me several times, struggling to speak. Finally, he called my name. Amity, that man doesn't want you or the child, does he? That's between him and me. Victor looked at me, as if making a monumental decision. Amity, come with me. I'll help you raise the child. I had no intention of wasting a single word on him. But his offer genuinely made me laugh. I looked up at him. Victor, what exactly do you mean by that? I saw everything, Amity. They took you to the hospital that day, and I couldn't even get close. Chad says that man has unfathomable connections and isn't someone you can afford to cross. And now, it seems I was right, he doesn't want you or the child. But Amity, we've known each other since we were kids, and I can't just stand by and watch you end up like this. I'll give you an apartment, transfer it to your name, and cover all your expenses, and the child's. Victor, I know you too well. You wouldn't suddenly feel charitable. So tell me, what's your real motive? Amity, I want you to stay by my side. He knelt in front of me, looking me in the eye. I want you to look at me the way you used to, love me the way you used to, and be with me always. If you want to keep the child, I won't mind, as long as you're by my side. I stared at Victor. Seeing him stripped of his arrogance and pride, he looked like a sad little boy asking for candy. But my heart didn't stir one bit. Victor, I looked down at him. The Amity who loved you and wanted to follow you forever, she died abroad 4 months ago. We can start fresh, Amity. I swear, I'll treat you well. But I don't like you anymore. Victor, I feel nothing for you now. You know me best, I can't stand the sight of anyone I don't care about. All the color drained from his face, yet he still wouldn't give up. If you don't like me, then who do you like? That irresponsible man who left you and the child? Amity, don't you know how hard it is to be a single mother, raising a fatherless child? Hard? I'm not afraid of death. Why would I fear hardship or struggle? So, you still blame me for abandoning you, right? What do you want me to do to forgive me? He grabbed my hand and refused to let go, and his emotions gradually became agitated. I didn't want to argue with him in a place like the hospital. I just casually said, then let Bonnie suffer all the pain I suffered. If I can do that, you will come back, right? I pushed him away, stood up, tightened my coat and walked out. Let's talk about it later. How could Victor bear to let Bonnie go through hell? So, after saying these words, I didn't take it to heart at all. We have known each other for so many years. Every time I argued with Bonnie, I never won. Victor always favored her. This time, it was probably the same. But I would never be sad and heartbroken about such things. I received a call from Mr. William in the evening a week later. I was walking in the square outside the community to digest my food. There was a small fountain there, and a group of pigeons flew in from somewhere. William's low voice sounded, and the pigeons took off at the right time. The pigeon whistle sounded, and the clouds at dusk were dyed colorful by the afterglow of the sun. I sat down on the bench, and I felt inexplicably peaceful and quiet in my heart. Miss Amity, I may have to trouble you with something. Mr. William, please. I will go out next month, and there is something I need to deal with personally. William still spoke in that unhurried tone. If I can come back safely, I will not disturb your life and the child as promised. But if I can't come back, the child in your belly is my only heir in the world. So Miss Amity, are you willing to stay in my family with your child? I just felt like someone was holding my heart tightly. At the moment when I was almost unable to breathe, I suddenly asked, "Mr. William, is there something dangerous?" "Don't be afraid, it's just some personal grudges, it won't involve you and the child. Also, I'm just asking for your opinion. If you don't want to, Amity, I won't force you." "Mr. William, I have to go to the hospital for another checkup tomorrow." There was silence for 2 short seconds on the other end of the phone. "Okay. Sorry to bother you. So, Mr. William, I may have to wait until the day after tomorrow to leave. Can you ask your people to pick me up the day after tomorrow?" I heard the intermittent sound of the signal in my ears. In that sound, William's breathing seemed no longer as steady as before. I stroked my slightly bulging belly, but the corners of my lips curled up for some reason. 10 o'clock the day after tomorrow morning, okay? Sure. Then it's settled, Amity. Okay, Mr. William, then it's settled. When the call ended, it was 2 o'clock in the morning on his side. The cold wind blew over with a strong smell of blood. It also pulled him back to reality from that rare and precious warmth. William put away his phone. The gentle emotion on his face during the call just now had long disappeared. He walked down the stairs slowly, not hurriedly. He walked to the man who was kneeling there and shaking like a sieve. The man's sight first saw a pair of shiny leather shoes. But the expensive leather shoes were splashed with blood. He was so scared that his legs trembled, and he bent his body even lower, knocked his head on the ground, and begged for mercy. "Mr. William, sir, please forgive me this time, I won't dare to do it again." His jaw was suddenly lifted by the tip of the shoe. The man's face was pale, and he raised his eyes tremblingly. Under the cold moon, William's eyes were even colder than the moonlight. I said, "People who follow me are not allowed to touch things that they shouldn't touch." "Mr. William. Not only did you touch it, your people also injured 3 policemen." "Mr. William, please. I won't dare to do it again, I swear, I will cut off one arm to swear to you." Too late. "Bart, send him to the police station." "Mr. William." The man was shocked. His crime would only lead to his death if he was sent to the police station. "Think about your wife and children." The man was quiet in an instant. William walked out of the yard, and the people around him handed him a warm towel. He wiped his hands carefully, and when he bent down to get into the car, he still spoke in a calm tone. "Clean up this place, she will come the day after tomorrow, don't scare her." William's mansion covers a huge area. The garden has a variety of styles, and the scenery is different in each season. It is winter now, but the garden is still full of flowers. The white buildings are scattered in an orderly manner. He took me to the main house, located in building number 1. The master bedroom suite that occupies the entire second floor is still decorated the same as that night. My face turned slightly red the moment I pushed the door open. William took my suitcase and asked the servant to go out. "You take a rest, then go wash up, I will clean up." "Mr. William, I can do it myself." "You are pregnant, it is already very hard." William held my hand and pulled me to sit on the sofa. I watched him open the suitcase and began to put the luggage away. Outerwear and some supplies are still easy. But when he started to organize my underwear, I couldn't sit still. "Mr. William." I stood up, and my body was extremely flexible for the first time after pregnancy. I snatched my underwear from his big hand. Maybe because my face was too red, William didn't force it. I quickly organized my underwear. I didn't even notice that William's underwear was in that drawer. When I went to the bathroom to wash up. Of course I didn't know. William stood in the huge cloakroom for a long time. Then, looking at the colorful colors in the closet except black, white, and gray. His eyes were filled with smiles little by little. I know very little about William. But in my opinion, he should be a decent person with a very good family background. And a decent person with a big business. So at first, I didn't think that what he said on the phone was serious. Until I heard it from Bart by accident. This time, he was going to a country with the most drug dealers. He was going to deal with the most vicious people. Those people did something that should never be done without Mr. William's knowledge. Now Mr. William has to deal with the aftermath and withdraw cleanly. I don't know how troublesome and dangerous it is. But Miss Amity, you are really our Mr. S lucky star. You are pregnant with our Mr. S child, which is a great thing. If anything unexpected happens, at least our Mr. William still has an heir left in the world." Bart began to wipe his tears as he spoke. I felt bad watching him cry, and I started to cry unconsciously. William happened to come back, and when he saw Bart making me cry, he got angry. "Don't scold him." I pulled William's sleeve and looked at him with red eyes. "Mr. William, please stay with me and the child tonight." In the first few days after I came here, I slept alone in the master bedroom on the second floor. William lived in the guest room. Speaking of which, we only met briefly a few times. Although we had sex and had a child. But to be honest, we were not familiar with each other at all. So, when William, wearing his nightgown, held me in his arms, my limbs were still a little stiff. But he just brushed my hair off my forehead and kissed me between my eyebrows, and then he didn't do anything uncomfortable. In the dark, I held his hand and placed it on my belly. "Mr. William, please touch the baby." His breathing became lighter at that moment. It took a while before he returned to his previous rhythm. His palms were dry and warm, gently caressing my bulging belly, and I gradually felt sleepy. Amity. When I was about to fall asleep, William suddenly kissed the corner of my lips. "I'm sorry, Amity." I was too sleepy at the time and didn't ask him why he said that. And later, until he left, I forgot to ask the reason. It was not until a long time later, when our child was about to go to elementary school. He told me the truth after getting drunk. There are not so many accidents and coincidences in this world. It's just that a caring person paved all the way for the person he likes step by step. William stayed in the master bedroom the night before he left. At that time, I was almost 5 months pregnant. Maybe it was because I was relaxed and took care of myself in my daily life. My body, which had been seriously damaged, has recovered most of it. I have gained weight on my body and face, and I look like a pregnant woman. In fact, I can feel William suffering these days. After all, he is in his prime and strong. And I, even when I was pregnant, did not lose my figure. On the contrary, my skin was moisturized and my complexion was very good. I was sleepy during pregnancy, but occasionally I could hear William getting up in the middle of the night to flush the bathroom. So that night, he kissed me and said goodnight as usual. I responded and hugged him again. No one knows. I often have a dream. The dream is not about those months of hardship and suffering. Instead, it is often the moment when we first met. I struggled desperately and shouted for help. He had the only Oriental face in the audience and was surrounded by countless people. In fact, I didn't hold out hope, and the straw that saved my life often couldn't really save my life. But he stopped and turned around to look at me in a state of embarrassment. Then, he said something to the person beside him. Soon, those who were holding me were scared and let go. I hugged myself tightly, trying to cover my body under the torn clothes. The heavy men's coat fell on my shoulders and covered me completely. Then, he stretched out his hand to me. That hand was slender and powerful, with a string of sandalwood beads on his wrist. At that moment, I thought I had met a soft-hearted god. "Amity, don't tease me." William grabbed my hand. "Why not?" William smiled helplessly and kissed my fingertips. "You ask even though you know the answer. It's almost 5 months, the doctor said it's okay." I suppressed my shyness and looked into his eyes boldly. "Or do you not want to? Are you unwilling?" "I'm afraid of hurting you and the baby." His palm fell on my lower abdomen and sighed softly. "Go to sleep, be obedient." I finally looked away and put my hot face on his chest. "Mr. William, the doctor said that as long as it's not violent, it's okay." After I finished speaking, he didn't respond, but he obviously held my arm, and his muscles gradually tightened like stone. I gritted my teeth and turned over in his arms. I searched it online, so it won't press on my stomach. Amity. The hot kisses fell densely on my neck and shoulders. William's voice was hoarse. "Who taught you to seduce men like this? There are so many on the internet." He lowered his head and kissed me tenderly on the ear. "Tell me if you feel uncomfortable." "Will you stop if I tell you?" I don't know where I got the courage from. I didn't know that I had such a naughty side in my bones. After saying that, he huddled up like a quail and regretted it. William hugged me tightly from behind. He whispered hoarsely in my ear, "No. But Amity. I will be more gentle." It's terrible. He probably didn't know that. I had been addicted to his gentleness for a long time. The second week after William left, I went out to relax. I met Bonnie unexpectedly. When she saw me, she was not as arrogant as before. She grabbed my hand and begged me to save her and send her back to her country. It suddenly occurred to me that what Victor promised me in the hospital before. It was not a joke. But Bonnie's relative is also quite powerful here. Didn't he protect her? Later Bart told me that Bonnie's cousin was sentenced to death. "Amity, I beg you." Bonnie knelt on the ground, hugged my legs, and begged again. I looked down at her. Bonnie's uncle went to jail. How could Bonnie have an easy life? She was abandoned by Victor in this foreign country, just like me at the beginning. It's a pity that she didn't have the same good luck as me. To meet Mr. William. Bart wanted to drive her away, but I stroked my bulging belly. What I thought in my heart was that Bonnie was bad, but she didn't deserve death. I made such a request to Victor at the beginning. There was an element of inciting trouble. But if we really want to blame, Victor is the one who should be hated the most. Just think of it as accumulating blessings for the baby in my belly and his father. Even if William lied to me about something, I still just want him to come back safely. Besides, I don't want to be a rich young widow. Bart, call her family. I glanced at Bonnie. She must have been quite frightened. She looked a little abnormal. She is really lucky. I smiled, not cheap. I waved Bart over and whispered to him. A few days later, Bonnie's family in China received news of her. 10 million, their daughter can return home safely. At the same time, Bonnie's parents also knew that it was Victor who left Bonnie abroad. Bonnie's parents and Victor had a big fight, and Victor was overwhelmed and unable to deal with it. After Bonnie went back, Bonnie's parents used this as an excuse to force Victor to marry her. It is said that the two had a very unhappy quarrel since the wedding, and Victor hit Bonnie again. Bonnie's parents naturally did not give up, and the two sides fought. After marriage, the two lived in dire straits. The first love in his heart, the unattainable goddess. Later, she became the person he hated and despised the most. Victor drank all day, and quarreled with Bonnie when he got home drunk. Beating her became a common occurrence. And this is a story for later. It has nothing to do with me. Oh, by the way, I donated all the 10 million to the Children's Charity Foundation and the orphanage. When William left, he said that he would come back before I gave birth. However, there was still no news from him until a week before the birth. And the last time I heard from him was 7 days ago. People in the house were gradually panicking. Even I heard several bad discussions. I thought about it and called Bart over. I checked all the servants in the house one by one. Those who were restless and had extramarital affairs were sent away. Then the door was closed tightly, and no one went out or came in. On the third day before the birth, there was still no news from William. Bart could no longer sit still and insisted on going to Mexico. I was also on the verge of collapse. I was about to give birth, but I was getting thinner day by day. Bart, go ahead. No matter what, whether you live or die, you have to give me a definite answer. But William forced Bart to stay. He went deep into the danger, but he was still most worried about me. He left his most trusted subordinate at home. But Miss Amity. Bart was in a dilemma. Otherwise, I will send you back home first. It's not safe here anymore. William is naturally the most important in his heart. But I am pregnant with William's child. What's more, William has not been heard from for a long time. His enemies are waiting for an opportunity to move. The day before yesterday, Bart and his men just caught a few strangers with guns hidden on their bodies outside the house. Bart, I won't go back home. My child and I will wait for him here. Miss Amity. You go ahead. I can do it alone. I smiled at him, just like I did to Victor that day. I also reached out my hand to Bart. Look, Amity can't be defeated. She can endure any hardship and is not afraid of anything. Bart looked at my hand that had not recovered after a long time. Tears rolled down his cheeks. I won't leave. I will listen to you. I will protect you and your children. I wanted to persuade him to leave and go find William. Maybe he is the only one who is lacking now. William can be saved. But before I could open my mouth, I suddenly felt a pain in my abdomen. The severe contraction made me unable to say a word. When I was about to faint from the pain, there was only one last thought in my mind. I couldn't wait until William came back, and I couldn't wait until he accompanied me to give birth. When he left, he asked me if I was afraid. I said I was not afraid of anything. But in fact, I was really afraid of pain, afraid of suffering, afraid of being beaten and scolded, and afraid of being hungry and cold. I was also afraid of the knife when giving birth. So, William, it would be great if you were here. How great would it be if you were here? Bart and the servants took me to the hospital. I was just pushed into the delivery room, and the nurse had no time to close the door. A strong hand suddenly pushed the door open. Amity. I was lying on the delivery bed in a coma. I could vaguely hear William's voice. I tried to open my eyes to confirm that he was back. But I didn't have any strength. But my hand was tightly held by a warm and generous big hand. I was very familiar with the temperature and strength. I felt relieved instantly. Amity. William lowered his head and kissed me gently. I'm back, Amity. The delivery process was relatively smooth. The doctor said that my physical indicators were very good and completely met the indicators for natural birth. And if it was a natural birth, the pain would stop soon after delivery. No longer need to endure the pain and torture of a few days after a cesarean section. But William was obviously scared. Although he was asked to leave in the middle of the delivery because he was too nervous and affected the doctor's work. And when I cried in the delivery room, William stood outside the door and shed tears. Bart was shocked when he saw it. William sternly ordered him not to tell anyone. But Bart told me secretly as soon as I left the delivery room. I couldn't help laughing when I thought about that scene, but I cried again while laughing. No matter how hard it is, I am willing to endure hardships. But who doesn't want to be loved and held in the palm of someone's hand? Not long after I gave birth, William made an appointment for surgery. The old lady of the family was still a little reluctant. But the old lady had old ideas, and looking at the great-grandson in her arms, she was satisfied again, and didn't persuade her anymore. William came back this time with injuries on his body. He lost contact during that period because of his serious injuries. I didn't say anything. After I recovered completely, I asked William to accompany me to the church. I just hope that God can bless him for my sincerity. William suddenly said to me, Amity, you don't know how many sins I have committed. He deliberately replaced the contraceptive pills, and the hospital power outage was his instruction. Later, he coaxed her to come to him when she was pregnant. He was not afraid of God's punishment for him, he was just afraid that she would be afraid of him and alienate him. He was just afraid that his greed for her would not be forgiven. He finally imitated me and stood beside me. I closed my eyes and prayed devoutly. William frequently looked at me sideways. Long time ago, we didn't know. At that time, that turn around and look, it was destined for this life. End.